James Carter maneuvered his spacecraft, the Horizon, towards the verdant expanse of an uncharted planet, its surface teeming with colors that were alien yet oddly familiar. As he descended, the lush forests and winding rivers grew more distinct, a stark contrast to the sterile confines of his ship. Upon landing, James quickly prepared his gear. Exploration suit, check. Sample kits, check. Translator. Ah, here it is, he muttered to himself, clipping the device to his belt. He was alone on this mission, a fact that both thrilled and unnerved him. He pushed open the hatch, and the air, fragrant with the scent of unknown flora, rushed in to greet him. Stepping onto the alien soil, James headed towards a nearby woodland that his sensors indicated was rich in biological activity. As he walked, he marveled at the towering plants and the subtle sounds of unseen creatures. Suddenly, a rustling noise from behind a large fern caught his attention. James turned, expecting a small animal, perhaps a native rodent. Instead, he found himself staring into the eyes of a humanoid figure. She was slightly shorter than him, her skin shimmering with a soft glow that seemed to pulse with life. "Whoa!" James exclaimed, stepping back instinctively. The alien woman mirrored his surprise but did not flee. "Human?" she spoke, her voice carrying a melodic tone that resonated strangely with his translator. "Yes, I'm human. My name is James," he replied, holding out his hand, a gesture of peace from Earth. "I am Zara," she said, cautiously extending her hand to touch his. Her touch was light, curious. "You are not from here. Why come to our world?" James lowered his hand, choosing his words carefully. "I'm a scientist. I came to study your planet's life forms, to learn. I mean no harm." Zara looked at him intently. "Learning is good. My people cherish knowledge too. But you must be careful. There are rules. You have entered a sacred place." "A sacred place?" James echoed, looking around. "I didn't realize." "Come," she interrupted, her tone suddenly urgent. "Follow me. You must meet the elders. They will decide what to do with you." James hesitated, but realizing his vulnerable position, he nodded and followed. As they walked through the dense foliage, Zara began to explain more about her people and their connection to the land. Her words painted a picture of a civilization deeply in tune with their environment, a stark contrast to the often exploitative history of human colonization. As they approached what looked like a village, made up of structures that blended almost seamlessly with the surrounding nature, other figures appeared. They were tall and imposing, with eyes that studied James with open curiosity and slight mistrust. "Brothers," Zara called out to them, her voice steady. "This is James, a human from beyond our stars." He did not know he trespassed. One of the figures, larger than the others, stepped forward. "A human here? This is unprecedented." "Zara, you know the laws." "I know, Jorin," she replied, her voice firm. "But we must bring him before the elders. They will see the truth of his heart." Jorin nodded, though his gaze on James remained wary. "Very well. Come, human. Today you shall meet those who weave the fate of our people." As they entered the village, James felt every gaze upon him. It was clear that his presence was an anomaly here, a potential threat but also an opportunity, for both him and the Zarfians. His heart raced as he considered what lay ahead. Would they see him as a friend or a foe? Only time would tell. Chapter 2. Captured. As James followed Zara and her imposing brother Jorin into the heart of the village, a crowd began to gather, their whispers filling the air with a mix of curiosity and concern. The architecture of the village was a sight to behold, with buildings crafted from the living trees around them, branches woven into walls and roofs in a way that spoke of a deep, intrinsic bond with nature. They reached a large, open pavilion where several elder Zarfians were seated. All conversation ceased as the group approached. Zara spoke first, her voice clear and respectful. "Elders, this is James. He has come from beyond our sky and has entered our sacred grounds unknowingly." One of the elders, a venerable figure with luminous eyes, fixed his gaze on James. "Human, your presence here is troubling. Our laws are clear about outsiders. Why should we not treat you as a trespasser? James felt every eye on him, the weight of the moment pressing down. He took a deep breath before answering. I apologize for my intrusion. It was not my intention to disrespect your customs or threaten your peace. I am here to learn, not to harm. Another elder, slightly younger and with a stern countenance, leaned forward. Learning can lead to disruption. How do we know your intentions are pure? Before James could respond, Jorin stepped in. We have considered this, elder. My suggestion is to keep the human under watch. Let him prove his worth and his words. Perhaps he can be useful. The suggestion sparked murmurs among the crowd. Zara looked at her brother, then back at James, her expression unreadable. The head elder raised his hand for silence. Very well. Jorin, you will oversee this human, James. He will stay in the village under your guidance. Human, do you agree to our terms? James nodded, realizing it was the only way. Yes, I agree. Thank you for your fairness. With the decision made, the crowd slowly dispersed, leaving James under the watchful eyes of Jorin and another elder, Merrick, who had remained silent until now. Merrick was a stocky figure, his face lined with the experiences of many years. Come with me, human, Jorin commanded, leading James to what appeared to be a guest dwelling. You will stay here. Do not wander. The rules of our village are strict, and the penalty for breaking them is severe. James entered the small dwelling, which was comfortably furnished with items crafted from natural materials. It was clear the Zarfians were skilled artisans. Merrick followed them inside, his demeanor less imposing than Jorin's. I am responsible for our village's history and lore. I will be interested to learn what you know of the cosmos, James. There may be things we can learn from each other. That would be an honor, James replied, grateful for Marek's softer approach. Over the next few hours, Jorin and Merrick stayed with James, discussing their technologies, their understanding of the universe, and the Zarfian way of life. James shared stories of Earth, its oceans, mountains, and his own experiences as a scientist. The initial tension slowly eased as they found common ground in their mutual respect for knowledge and discovery. As night fell, James stood at the entrance of his dwelling, looking up at the alien sky. Jorin joined him, his earlier hostility subdued. You speak well, human. Perhaps you are different from what we feared. Thank you, Jorin. I hope to prove that I can be a friend to your people, James said, hoping his journey on this strange planet would lead to mutual understanding and respect. Jorin nodded, looking up at the stars. Perhaps, human. We shall see what the coming days bring. As they parted ways for the night, James felt a cautious hope. Despite the uncertain start, perhaps this unexpected detour could forge a new path for human and Zarfian relations. Chapter 3. Forbidden Bond. As dawn broke over the village, James was awakened by the soft rustling of leaves. Stepping outside, he was greeted by the sight of Merrick, who seemed to have been up for hours already. Good morning, James. I hope you found our accommodations comfortable, Merrick said, offering a warm smile. Very much so, thank you, James replied, stretching his limbs. It's a beautiful morning. Indeed, it is, Merrick agreed, gesturing towards the center of the village. Today, I thought it would be beneficial for you to assist me in some daily tasks. It would give you a practical understanding of our way of life. James nodded eagerly. I'd appreciate that. I want to learn as much as I can. The two set off towards a large garden where several Zarfians were already at work. They were tending to an array of plants that James had never seen before. Merrick handed him a tool that resembled a trowel. We begin each day by tending to our crops. Food and medicine are both grown here. As they worked, Merrick explained the properties of each plant, occasionally passing one to James to examine. The exchange was not just about farming. It was a lesson in Zarfian botany and the community's deep-rooted connection to their environment. After a few hours in the garden, they took a break under the shade of a large, leafy structure. Jorin joined them, carrying a basket of fruit for the group. James, I see you've adapted well to our morning routine, Jorin observed, his tone more amiable than before. It's fascinating, James responded, taking a piece of fruit. Everything is so integrated. Your practices are sustainable and respectful to nature. That is the Zarfian way, Jorin said. But tell me, on Earth, how do you handle your resources? James thought for a moment before answering. Honestly, we could learn a lot from you. We have technology, yes, but we often struggle with sustainability. Merrick nodded thoughtfully. Technology is a tool like any other. It must be used wisely. Their conversation was interrupted by Zara, who approached them with a slight urgency in her step. Elders, I need to speak with James. It's about a cultural matter. Jorin and Merrick exchanged looks before nodding. Go ahead, Zara. We'll join the others in preparing for the midday meal. As Zara led James away from the others, they walked in silence until they reached the edge of a small lake, its surface glittering in the sunlight. James, there's something I must discuss with you, Zara began, her tone serious. Tonight, we will have a gathering, a celebration of the full moon. It's a significant event for us. My brothers and I would like you to attend. It would be the first time an outsider has ever participated. James was touched by the invitation. I'd be honored to join. What should I expect? Zara smiled, visibly relieved by his acceptance. It's a time of unity and renewal. We share stories, music, and dance. It's also a time when we forge bonds. It's intimate and sacred. I understand, James said, nodding. I'll respect your traditions. Zara looked at him, her eyes reflecting the sky above. Thank you, James. This means more to us than you might realize. The rest of the day passed quickly, with James learning more about the Zarfian culture and preparing for the evening's event. As night fell, he dressed in garments provided by Zara's family, designed to reflect the colors of the moonlit night. When he arrived at the gathering, the atmosphere was vibrant with music and soft laughter. Zara found him among the crowd, taking his hand to lead him to where the celebration was in full swing. As they joined in the dance, their earlier conversations, the lessons of the day, merged into a deeper understanding. The music swelled around them, and for a moment, James felt an overwhelming connection to this alien world, bound by the universal language of music and movement. Their hands clasped, their steps in sync, James and Zara danced under the Zarfian moons, forging a bond that felt both forbidden and inevitable. The night deepened around them, filled with promise and the subtle thrill of new beginnings. Chapter 4. The Ultimatum. The morning after the full moon celebration, James awoke to find Jorin waiting outside his quarters. The warrior's stance was tense, his gaze unyielding. Come with me, Jorin said without preamble. James frowned, sensing that something was wrong. What's going on? The elders wish to speak with you again. Quickly now, Jorin insisted. As they made their way to the central pavilion, James noticed the village had grown quieter than usual. The chatter of the Zarfian villagers was subdued, their curious stares now tinged with a wary unease. At the pavilion, Zara and Merrick stood side by side before the gathered elders. Zara's face was unreadable, while Marek's brow was furrowed. James stepped forward, aware of the gravity of the moment. The head elder addressed him. James, last night's celebration was a rare event, and your presence among us was an unprecedented occurrence. Your actions and words have impressed some and troubled others. Our people value their traditions deeply, and they have been careful not to allow outside influences to disrupt our harmony. James swallowed, waiting for the elder to continue. It is clear that your bond with Zara is more than casual, the elder said. This presents a problem. Zara's voice was steady as she interjected. Elder, I can vouch for James's character. He has shown respect for our customs and our people. Zara, your loyalty is noted, the elder replied. But loyalty alone does not resolve the situation. There is a matter of trust and preservation. Merrick stepped forward, his tone measured. The elders have deliberated, James. The presence of an outsider in this village is unprecedented, and the growing closeness between you and Zara has caused concern. There is a law among our people. When a bond is formed between one of us and an outsider, it must be formalized. James blinked. Formalized? What do you mean? You must choose, the elder said firmly. If you wish to remain here, if you wish to continue this bond with Zara, you must enter into a union, a commitment that binds you to our people and to our way of life. Otherwise, you must leave, never to return. James felt the weight of the words hit him like a tidal wave. You're saying I either marry Zara or I have to leave? Yes, the elder said simply. This is the way of our people. You have been accepted so far, but this acceptance is conditional on your commitment to us. Without that commitment, you can no longer stay. The words hung in the air. James turned to Zara, who looked back at him with a mixture of vulnerability and quiet strength. Zara? He began softly. Did you know this would happen? I knew it was possible, she admitted. But I hoped you would have more time to decide. James looked from Zara to Jorin, then to Merrick. What happens if I say yes? Jorin, ever the pragmatist, spoke up. If you say yes, you become one of us. You will be part of our community, bound by our traditions and laws. Your life will change, but you will not face exile. And if I say no? James asked. If you say no, Merrick answered carefully, you must leave immediately. There would be no animosity, but our laws are clear. James ran a hand through his hair, glancing back at Zara. She stepped forward, her voice quiet but steady. James, this is not a choice I would force upon you. But know that if you stay, you will always have me by your side. If you leave, I will understand. Her words only made his decision harder. He had come here on a mission to explore, to learn, not to find himself bound to another culture. And yet, something in Zara's presence, in her spirit, had begun to change him. I need time to think, James said finally. The elder nodded. You have until sundown. James spent the day walking the outskirts of the village with Jorin at his side. They said little at first, until Jorin finally broke the silence. You have a strong spirit, Jorin said. You have adapted quickly to our ways. But the choice you face is not easy. No, it's not, James replied. I came here to learn, to study your people. I never expected this. Jorin stopped and looked at him. You are the first outsider to be given this choice. That speaks to something, doesn't it? James considered that. It does. But it also means I can't make this decision lightly. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, James returned to the pavilion. Zara was waiting for him, her expression unreadable. The elders and Merrick were gathered, ready to hear his answer. James looked at them all, then at Zara. I've made my decision, he said, his voice steady. I will stay. I will commit to your people. Zara's face lit up, a smile breaking through her composed exterior. The elders nodded in approval, and Merrick stepped forward to clasp James's hand. You have chosen wisely, Merrick said. We welcome you, James, as one of our own. And so, with the setting sun casting its warm light over the village, James took the first steps into his new life, one that bound him not just to Zara, but to the Zarfian people and their way of life. Chapter 5. Cultural Exchange. The next morning, James woke to the soft hum of Zarfian voices outside his dwelling. When he stepped into the sunlight, he found Zara waiting for him, holding a tray of vibrant fruits. Her serene smile quickly turned into a look of amusement as he tried to blink away the last remnants of sleep. You seem surprised, she said, handing him a piece of fruit that glowed faintly in the morning light. Not used to room service in the middle of the jungle, James replied, his lips quirking into a grin. He took a bite of the fruit, the flavor unlike anything he'd ever tasted. Sweet and slightly tangy, with a texture that was both firm and juicy. Not bad at all. Zara chuckled and gestured for him to follow her. There's more to see. If you're going to be part of this village, you'll need to understand our ways. They walked through the bustling village paths, where Zarfians of all ages were engaged in their daily routines. Some were tending to the bioluminescent gardens, while others wove intricate patterns into fabric that shimmered in the dappled sunlight. The sounds of gentle laughter and rhythmic drumming floated in the air, blending with the chirps of native creatures. Jorin was waiting for them near a large communal structure made of living vines and polished wood. He crossed his arms, his imposing figure seeming to fill the space. "You're finally up, human," he said, though his tone held more gruffness than actual irritation. "Morning to you too," James replied, earning a faint smirk from the warrior. "We'll start with the basics," Jorin said, leading them into the structure. "This is our knowledge hall. The markings here record our history, our teachings, and our stories." The walls were lined with carvings and symbols that glowed faintly, as if imbued with the energy of the planet itself. James traced his fingers over the intricate patterns, marveling at the craftsmanship. "You don't use written texts?" "Not in the way you do," Zara explained. "Our stories are alive, woven into these carvings. Touch them and you'll feel the memory. See for yourself." She guided his hand to a particular section of the wall. As James touched it, a vivid series of images and sounds flooded his mind. He saw a young Zarfian child learning to dance, heard the rhythmic beat of drums, and felt the weight of ceremonial garments. It was like stepping into someone else's memory, a rich tapestry of sensations and emotions. "Whoa," James breathed, pulling his hand back. "That's incredible. It's how we preserve knowledge and pass it on," Jorin said, clearly proud. "It ensures that nothing is lost, and everyone who comes after can experience it firsthand." James nodded, absorbing this new perspective. "We have books, recordings, and data files, but nothing that feels so personal. It's like you're sharing a part of yourself." Jorin grunted in agreement, then motioned toward the door. "Come, there's more." The next stop was a workshop where Zarfians shaped tools, instruments, and ornaments. Merrick was already there, demonstrating a technique to a group of younger villagers. He waved them over as they entered. "James, have you?" "Not exactly," James admitted, eyeing the glowing branch Merrick was holding. "Then today's your chance," Merrick said, handing James the branch. "This material responds to your intent. Focus on what you want it to become." James furrowed his brow, holding the branch and trying to picture something simple. Perhaps a small carving or a smooth tool handle. The branch began to shift under his touch, its texture softening and reshaping. Zara stepped closer, guiding his hands with gentle precision. "Don't force it," she murmured. "Let the material guide you as much as you guide it." Together, their hands shaped the branch into a small, elegant figurine. It wasn't perfect, but it was recognizable, a tiny representation of a Zarfian dancer. "Not bad for a beginner," Merrick said, nodding approvingly. "You'll get better with practice." As the day went on, James and Zara continued their exploration of the village. She showed him how they harvested and prepared their food, how they used natural materials to construct their dwellings, and how their community worked together to maintain harmony. James participated in each activity, often fumbling at first, but gradually finding his rhythm with Zara's patient guidance. At one point, they sat on a platform overlooking a sparkling river. Zara handed him a cup made from a hollowed fruit, filled with a refreshing, cool liquid. "This is how we celebrate new beginnings," she said, raising her cup. "To learning and growing." James clinked his cup against hers. "To sharing and understanding." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the river flow. James glanced at Zara, noticing the way her face softened when she was at ease, the subtle glow of her skin in the dimming light. "You know," he said, breaking the silence, "I wasn't sure what I'd find here, but now, I can't imagine not being part of this." Zara turned to him, her gaze steady. "You're one of us now, James. You chose to stay and we chose to welcome you. That's not something we take lightly." James smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond the drink in his hand. For the first time since he had landed on this planet, he felt like he belonged. Chapter 6. Acceptance. It was late afternoon when James found himself summoned once more to the Elders' Hall. The structure stood in the center of the village, its natural curves and living walls glowing faintly under the gentle light of the Zarfian sky. Inside, the elders sat in a semicircle, their expressions calm yet measured. Zara stood nearby, her hands clasped in front of her, her usually confident demeanor tinged with a quiet tension. Merrick guided James toward the center of the room. "They're ready to hear from you," he said in a low voice before stepping back. James took a deep breath, aware that everyone's eyes were on him. "Thank you for giving me the chance to speak," he began, his voice steady. "Since I first arrived here, I've tried to understand your ways, to respect your traditions. I know that my presence is unusual and that my relationship with Zara has raised questions." One of the elders, a woman with silver-streaked hair and a piercing gaze, leaned forward slightly. "And what answers do you offer, human? What do you bring to our people that warrants such an exception?" James hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I bring my willingness to learn, my respect for your culture, and my commitment to Zara and to this community. I didn't come here to disrupt your way of life. I came here to understand, and in doing so, I found something I never expected." The elders exchanged glances, their silent communication unreadable. Finally, the head elder, an older man with a deep, resonant voice, spoke. "Your words carry weight, James, but our trust must be earned through actions, not just promises." Zara stepped forward, her voice firm and unwavering. "James has proven himself to me and to others in the village. He faced the trials with integrity. He has shown kindness and humility. He has chosen to embrace our ways, not to impose his own." Jorin, standing to the side, crossed his arms and added, "I've seen the human's character firsthand. He's not weak, not deceitful. He may not be Zarfian, but he has acted with honor." The elder with the piercing gaze spoke again, her tone skeptical but not unkind. "Words of support from those who know you best. But what about the rest of us? Why should we accept you into our community when no outsider has ever been granted this before?" James straightened his posture, meeting her gaze. "Because I'm not asking to change who you are. I'm asking to be part of something greater than myself. I've seen how you live, how you work together, how you honor each other and your environment. I don't want to take that from you. I want to learn from it, contribute to it, and protect it." The elders sat quietly for a moment, their expressions unreadable. Then the head elder turned to Merrick. "You have spent much time with him. What is your judgment?" Marek's voice was calm, deliberate. "He has shown himself to be sincere, hardworking, and willing to adapt. In my view, he has earned a place among us." Another elder, younger and more reserved, finally spoke. "I agree. His actions speak to his character. Perhaps it is time we consider a new path." The head elder nodded slowly. "Very well. James Carter, by the will of the elders and the support of those who have come to know you, we accept you as a member of this community." James felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you," he said earnestly. "I won't let you down." Zara's shoulders relaxed, a smile breaking through her previously tense expression. Jorin gave a short nod of approval, and Merrick patted James on the shoulder. "Welcome," Merrick said simply. The elders rose, signaling the end of the meeting. As the others filed out, Zara approached James, her smile now fully formed. "I knew they'd see what I see in you," she said softly. James grinned back. "Thanks for speaking up for me. It means a lot." "I didn't do it just for you," she teased, her eyes sparkling. "I happen to like having you around." They stepped outside into the warm glow of the late afternoon. Around them, villagers had already begun to gather, curious about the outcome. Jorin walked up, his usual stoic expression softer than before. "Well done, human. You've officially earned your place." "Thanks, Jorin," James said. "Coming from you, that means a lot." Jorin smirked. "Don't get too comfortable. You'll still need to prove yourself every day." "I wouldn't expect anything less," James replied. As the small crowd dispersed, Zara turned to James. "Come on, let's walk." They strolled through the village, the atmosphere lighter now that the tension had lifted. Zarfians greeted them with polite nods and curious smiles. James felt a new sense of belonging as he walked alongside Zara, knowing that his place here had been solidified not just by the elder's decision, but by the trust and connections he had built. When they reached the edge of the village, overlooking the river, Zara stopped and looked at him. "You've done something no one else has ever done here. That's not small." James shrugged, his grin returning. "What can I say? I'm full of surprises." She laughed, a sound that seemed to blend with the gentle flow of the river and the soft rustling of leaves. In that moment, James knew he had made the right choice. The journey had been uncertain, but standing here with Zara, in a place that now felt like home, he felt certain of one thing. This was where he belonged. Chapter 7: Engagement Trials. James had barely recovered from the shock of the elder's decision when Jorin and Merrick led him to a clearing at the edge of the forest. A group of Zarfians had gathered, their expressions solemn. Zara stood among them, her face a mixture of determination and worry. "What's happening now?" James asked, glancing from Jorin to Merrick. "These are the engagement trials," Jorin replied. "They are a series of tasks that test your commitment and compatibility. They're a tradition for any couple seeking to formalize their bond." James glanced at Zara, who nodded slightly. "It's how our people ensure that those who join their lives together can truly rely on one another." "And if we fail?" James asked. "You won't fail," Merrick said firmly, but there was a note of caution in his voice. "But if you were to give up, it would signal that the union is not meant to be." James took a deep breath, steadying himself. "All right, what's the first trial?" Jorin stepped forward and gestured to a set of woven baskets filled with bright, glowing stones. "The first trial is one of cooperation. You and Zara must carry these stones from here to the ceremonial circle without letting their light dim. It will require both of you to work in harmony." "That doesn't sound too bad," James said, picking up a basket. It was heavier than it looked, and as soon as he lifted it, the glow began to fade. "What's going on?" "The stones react to stress and imbalance," Zara explained, grabbing a basket of her own. "We have to move steadily and keep pace with each other. If one of us rushes ahead or falls behind, the light will diminish. So we need to stay in sync," James said, adjusting his grip. "All right, let's do this." They began walking side by side, careful to match each other's steps. At first, the glowing stones flickered as James and Zara struggled to find a rhythm. But as they focused, their movements began to align. They exchanged glances, each silently adjusting to the other's pace. "Not bad," Zara said after a few minutes. "You're learning quickly. Just don't trip," James teased, earning a small smile from her. By the time they reached the ceremonial circle, the stones were glowing steadily. The assembled Zarfians murmured approval. "Well done," Jorin said. "You've passed the first trial." James set the basket down, his arms aching. "What's next?" The second trial took place in the forest, where Merrick explained that they would need to find a rare flower that only bloomed in the deepest part of the woods. The catch? The flowers were guarded by large, cautious creatures that roamed the area. "Isn't this more of a test of our survival skills than our bond?" James asked as they set off. "No," Zara said, her voice calm. "It's about trust. I've done this before. I know how to approach these creatures without startling them. You'll have to trust me to lead us through." James nodded. "All right, I'll follow your lead." The forest was thick and alive with strange sounds. James stayed close behind Zara, watching as she moved gracefully through the underbrush. When they reached a clearing, Zara raised her hand, signaling James to stop. "There," she whispered, pointing to a cluster of vibrant flowers growing near a sleeping creature. "We have to move slowly and carefully. If it wakes up, it might panic." James swallowed hard. "Got it." As Zara crept closer, James followed her example, keeping his footsteps as quiet as possible. She gently plucked one of the flowers and then another. When the creature stirred, James froze, holding his breath. Zara motioned for him to stay still, and after a tense moment, the creature settled back into its slumber. They backed away slowly until they were a safe distance. James let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That was intense. "Trust is the key," Zara said, holding up the flowers. And you trusted me. The final trial took place near a rushing river that cut through the village outskirts. Jorin explained that the trial involved building a bridge using nothing but natural materials found nearby. The challenge wasn't just the construction. It was doing it together with no one taking full control. All right, James said as he surveyed the area. What do we need first? Branches, Zara replied, already scanning the ground. Sturdy ones that won't snap under weight. They worked together, gathering branches, vines, and stones. James tied the vines as tightly as he could while Zara carefully placed the stones for stability. They discussed each step, occasionally disagreeing but always finding a compromise. You think this will hold? James asked, testing the tension of a vine. It will if you tied it properly, Zara teased. Trust me, I did. James shot back with a grin. All right, let's test it. They stepped onto the makeshift bridge, holding their breath as it creaked under their weight. When it held firm, they crossed to the other side, earning cheers from the Zarfians watching nearby. Congratulations, Merrick said as they returned. You have passed all the trials. James felt a mixture of relief and accomplishment as he turned to Zara. I guess that means we make a pretty good team. It does, she said, her eyes bright with the kind of warmth that needed no words. Chapter 8, United. As the day of the bonding ceremony arrived, the village buzzed with activity. Zarfians moved through the central gathering area, arranging garlands of luminescent flowers, stringing them between the great trees that formed the heart of their community. The air hummed with anticipation, the faint rhythm of ceremonial drums setting the tone for what was to come. James stood at the edge of the clearing, watching as the preparations unfolded. He felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. Merrick approached him, a faint smile softening the older Zarfian's usually serious demeanor. James, you look as if you're about to face a wild beast, Merrick said, clapping a hand on his shoulder. More like a wild crowd, James admitted. I've faced plenty of challenges here, but standing in front of everyone and making this official? It's different. You've proven yourself, Merrick said. The people respect you now. They've seen how you handled the trials, how you treated Zara. That's what truly matters. James nodded, taking a deep breath. Thanks, Merrick. I'll keep that in mind. Not far off, Zara stood with her brothers. Jorin adjusted the ornamental band across his chest, his warrior's demeanor still evident even in the festive attire. He glanced at James and gave a short nod, as if to say, "You've earned this." When the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the village, the ceremony began. The Zarfians formed a large circle around a central platform made of smooth stone, inlaid with intricate carvings. Zara stepped onto the platform first, her gown woven from iridescent fibers that shimmered with every step. Her gaze met James's, steady and sure. Merrick motioned for James to follow. Now it's your turn. As James walked onto the platform, he heard murmurs from the crowd, a mix of curiosity and approval. He stood next to Zara, and for a moment, the noise faded. It was just the two of them, standing side by side, connected by everything they had endured and achieved together. The head elder stepped forward, raising a hand for silence. Today, we gather to witness a bond that has never before been formed. A human and a Zarfian, united not by law alone, but by understanding, trust, and shared purpose. The elder turned to James. You, James Carter, have chosen to join our people, to walk among us as one of us. Do you promise to honor our ways, to stand with us in times of challenge and in times of peace? James met the elder's gaze. I promise. The elder then addressed Zara. Zara, daughter of this village, you have chosen to bond with an outsider, to trust his heart as you would one of our own. Do you promise to guide him, to walk beside him, and to share the burdens and joys of this union? Zara's voice was clear and unwavering. I promise. With that, the elder took a small bowl from one of the attendants. The liquid inside glowed softly, and as the elder dipped a ceremonial brush into it, he painted a simple mark on Zara's hand, then James's. The markings lit up briefly, a symbol of their union. "It is done," the elder announced. "From this day forth you are united. Together, you will write a new chapter for our people." The crowd erupted in cheers, and the drums resumed, their rhythm filling the air with joy. Zarfian stepped forward to offer their congratulations, presenting James and Zara with gifts, woven fabrics, carved trinkets, and bundles of aromatic herbs. Jorin approached them, his expression as stoic as ever, but his words betrayed a hint of warmth. "You've done well, James. Don't make me regret giving you that nod earlier." "I'll do my best, Jorin," James replied with a grin. Merrick joined them, his tone more lighthearted. "I'd say it's a good start. Now enjoy the celebration. It's a rare thing to see this many smiles in one place." As the night wore on, the village transformed into a scene of revelry. Music filled the air, Zarfians danced under the stars, and the aroma of food and drink wafted through the clearing. James found himself drawn into the festivities, learning new dances, tasting unfamiliar flavors, and sharing laughter with his new community. At one point, he and Zara found a quiet spot near the edge of the celebration. They sat together, watching the lights of the village twinkle against the night sky. Zara reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining effortlessly. "Thank you, James," she said softly, "for choosing this, for choosing me." "I think it was the only choice that made sense," he replied, meeting her gaze. "After everything we've been through, it feels right." She leaned her head against his shoulder, and for a moment, everything else faded away. The challenges, the doubts, the uncertainty. They had found something rare, something worth holding on to. The celebration continued long into the night, a testament to the beginning of something new. For James, this wasn't just a union with Zara. It was a step into a future where humans and Zarfians could learn from each other, grow together, and build a bond that might one day reach beyond their village, beyond their world.